Today, our verse is James chapter 5, verse 4. Behold, the wages of the laborers who mowed your fields, which you kept back by fraud, are crying out against you, and the cries of the harvesters have reached the ears of the Lord of hosts. The first 6 verses of the last chapter of the letter of James, that is chapter 5, condemns the rich people who oppress the poor. Our verse highlights the accusation against the rich people, how they treat the poor. First, the rich hold back the wages, the salaries, or the payment for the workers, the laborers who mowed their fields. They keep the wages back by fraud. The Greek word used here is aposteremenos, a passive participle of the verb apostereo, which means obtaining something by deceiving another or taking away what rightfully belongs to another. That is, depriving, defrauding, or stealing from them. These poor people work for the rich, mowing their fields or working at the farms and harvesting their crops. Instead of paying them their just wages, the rich people still take what rightfully belongs to these people or trick them into paying them less. The rich were not only guilty of not paying the wages, it was also a form of oppression of the poor who could not fight for themselves. James says that the cries of these poor people have reached the ears of the Lord. I wonder how many poor people's cries are going up to God today. James was writing to the Jews in diaspora who knew the Torah, the law, the commandments of God. The law says, "You shall not oppress your neighbor or rob him. The wages of a hired worker shall not remain with you all night until the morning." Leviticus chapter 19 verse 13. Another part of the law says, "You shall give him his wages on the same day before the sun sets, for he is poor and counts on it, lest he cry against you to the Lord, and you be guilty of sin." Deuteronomy 24 verse 15. The condemnation of James is still very much with us today. Many poor people are suffering under the oppressive power of the rich. Some do not pay their workers' salaries on time, or refuse to pay them outrightly for flimsy excuses because they know these people cannot cry out or fight them. Worse still is to use the salaries of the poor to enrich themselves. The prophet Jeremiah says, "Woe to him who builds his house by unrighteousness and his upper rooms by injustice, who makes his neighbor serve him for nothing and does not give him his wages." Jeremiah 22 verse 13. I'd like to address the case of workers within our religious circles first. Those who work in our churches, parish houses, and religious communities. Can we beat our chest as priests, pastors, and religious leaders to say we pay them just wages and pay them regularly? For instance, in the Catholic Church in developing countries where you have full-time catechists, how do we care for these people who work hard to teach the faith to others? Many of them live in abject poverty, while the priests, their bosses, live in glass houses and sometimes find it hard to remunerate these people despite having families. It was heartbreaking to hear that during the COVID lockdowns, some domestic staff were either not paid or given part salaries in some churches. The case is not different from the domestic staff of our politicians and highly placed people in society. The question today is, how do I take care of those under my watch? These people may not fight us, but their cries to God will not go unattended. Lord, may I not be an accomplice in defrauding those who work with me. Amen. God bless you, and I wish you a pleasant day.